Greetings, my friend. It is the 14th day of the HaOmer, the midda of Malchut Sheva Gevura. So, gevura, as we've discussed, is this quality of boundary, focus, strength, the ability to discern, and to have that be in balance so that it's that discernment that gevura is actually supports expression in an appropriate way, in a way that actually leads to the greatest expression of who you are in the world, that leads to the greatest expression of loving kindness in the world. And some of us get a little bit too intense on the gevura, a little bit more judgmental, too discerning, too particular, and that disrupts our capacity to give forth. And some of us are a bit too diffuse and open and expansive and sort of rooted in chesed and expression without enough boundary and clarity and focus to enable us to actually contribute to the world in a way that is positive and effective and appropriate. And so the idea is not strong or weak in gevura, but it's balanced and appropriate. In that way, it's kind of like the immune system, because the immune system is there to determine boundary, to actually sit at the boundary of you and the world outside of you or inside of you, if you're thinking about your gastrointestinal tract, and to survey and constantly be vigilant about this is me and this is other. And like in anything, we want our sense of self and the sense of other to be appropriate so that we can have real relationships with others, that we can give and receive and be connected in meaningful ways, but not to be blurring the boundary and getting confused about who is self and other. And so gevura is an incredibly rich concept, and balancing our sense of gevura is incredibly important. And so the midda of Malchut, which is kind of the final midda, it's the seventh. It contains all of the other ones. Malchut is this aspect that gets called kingship, or kingship's really the past. Kingship, royalty, nobility. There's a lot of different qualities of it. And the whole question is like, how is my gevura? And how does Malchut complete or empower this midda of gevura to be balanced and appropriate, so that whether you're going outward in terms of expressing self in the world, or going inward in your spiritual life and practice about trying to connect to a higher transcendent sense of self to inform your life, gevura can either serve you or get in the way. I think I've mentioned in this notion of like inner practice, whether it's prayer or meditation, that voice that's constantly judging and distracting and preventing you from actually connecting to your inner quiet and clarity and focus and presence. That's like overactive gevura as well. So there's an aspect that's going in, there's an aspect that's going out. Gevura is about expressing and connecting like you want to be connected. And then Malchut, which is called nobility, kingship, we can understand that in different ways too. One way is being the boss. So, the king is the boss. The king has like all of the power. And to step into a sense of like, you know what? I am determined and I am going to overcome and deal with whatever I have to overcome and deal with. And so the Matok Dvash, who's the Rav Frisch, he's a huge chacham who has a sefer that's called Usfartam Lachem, and you will count them. He talks about the effort of gevura as overcoming the negative tendencies of the animal soul, overcoming the Yetzer Hara. And Malchut means just like knowing that you're the king of the army. You're actually in charge. And that's that confidence and intention to say, I'm going to overcome my negative tendencies. Whether my negative tendencies are to be too focused and overwhelmingly vigilant and hypercritical versus not having enough boundary and clarity. And just to be strong about it and to augment your strength through prayer. Prayer in the Zohar is connected to Malchut. Prayer is connected to plugging into godly presence and asking for help in overcoming the negative tendencies, and giving your attention and your focus on this day to really observing Where am I stepping back or falling away from, or not stepping into my strength of just choosing that I'm going to be the boss of my negative tendencies, that I'm going to be the rider of the horse and not have the horse ride me? Just to explain that metaphor, if you haven't heard that before, but like our animal soul, the embodied soul, is often analogous to like the horse. And your divine soul, your higher self, your higher qualities, that's the rider. We want the rider to be riding the horse. And Malchut is to be the rider, sitting up on the horse, holding the reins, choosing to direct the horse, that quality of the Yetzer Hara, like animal soul, which is not a bad thing. It gets called hara, but it's not ra. It just has a tendency that it can do ra, but you need it for all the good things you want to do in the world too. I came across some really beautiful stuff recently from beautiful sefer, Shari Ora. It's a deep Kabbalistic sefer, Rabbi Jikatela. And what he's talking about there is that the quality of Malchut is also the name of Adnut, Aleph, Daled, Nun, and Yud. That's the name. If you're looking in a Sephardi or a Kabbalistic siddur like Matok Midvash, you'll see that name inside the Shem Havaya. In the final Hey of the Shem Yud, Hey, Vav, and Hey, there'll be the Shem Adnut, Aleph, Daled, Nun, and Yud. And what that represents is that Malchut is like the transducer that transmits from one world to the next. Your process of creativity, that giving forth that you do into the world, of expressing your goodness into the world in whatever endeavor you're doing. Malchut is the transducer, where something is given forth from you into the world beyond you or the world within you. And, a transducer in an engineering approach is sort of like, it takes an electrical signal and makes sound, like a speaker system is a transducer. Something that takes one kind of information and turns it into another kind of information. The midda of Malchut, I've seen it written by the Balatanya as be the quality that apportions exactly what's needed for what is being given to, what is receiving. There's a giver, there's a receiver. The giver, through the midda of Malchut, gives to the receiver perfectly according to that which the receiver needs. And this notion of Malchut is everywhere in reality. Hashem is the source of everything. The Shem Havaya, Yud He Vav and He, is flooding the world with what it needs for existence, and it's flooding the world with love and expressing that love into existence. And that's happening through a whole system of stepping down from tremendous expansion without boundary to the particulars of your fingernail or any particular thing in the world. And so there's level after level of transducing, of stepping down, the Seder Hishtal Shalut. At every level, there is a apportioning of what's needed to the level below. We say in the Ashrei prayer, Malchutcha, Malchut Kol Olamim. Your Malchut is the Malchut of every world. And that expression of authority happens through every generation. So through all space, through all time, this quality of Malchut is what is giving over the highest knowing from the unitive source of all consciousness to the particulars of our reality. And when we're plugging into the midda of Malchut, we're plugging into that capacity, that quality of giving what's appropriate and what's needed, taking all of the higher qualities and transmitting it to the next world in a way that's appropriate for that creation that's coming forth from us. So part of that tefillah, part of the meditative process, once you've done this sort of analytical thinking about like, okay, where am I in this midda of Malchut Sheba Gevura? To what extent am I sitting in the saddle and strong in my desire to overcome my negative tendencies and to use an appropriate amount of boundary and judgment and discernment? And to what extent am I actually praying for divine assistance in that, which is also the midda of Malchut? So that's what I'm aiming for. And there's a meditation of just sitting into the presence of God, to whatever extent you can do that, and reflecting on the fact that Malchut is the consolidation of all the midot. It's also referred to as the stone that receives everything, the Even Sapir, the shining stone, because it contains all the other Sefirot. So we're talking about Sefirot and Sapir, Even Sapir, the shining stone. So in the meditation, sitting into God's presence, connecting whatever sense you, or to whatever degree you do, and reflecting on this midda of Malchut as a shining stone, this radiant receiver of all the divine effulgence that comes through all of the seven Sefirot in this world, and through holding and gathering all of that, that quality, that shining quality of the light that Hashem is flowing through you, through all of the midot, that it should empower a balance and an appropriateness of this midda of gevura, this midda of strength and discipline, and that you should express strength and discipline in a way that leads to the greatest expression of the good that you've been given to give in the world. So thanks very much for watching. Share this with your friends if you liked it, and I look forward to seeing you soon.